Hello. We're going to wait just a couple more minutes to see if more people come, and it's not yet 9 o'clock, so I'll just wait a little bit and then we'll get started. Okay, so before we get started, I'd like to just talk a little bit about what we're going to be going over in this workshop. Can everybody hear me okay? Could I get a thumbs up in the chat if you guys can hear me all right? All right. So today I'm going to be going over the basics of web design, the different structures that can be used to create a website. By the end of this 1 hour session, each of you will be able to create your very own website that'll be able to be published live online. So yeah, let's get started. So we're going to be using Repl. I'm going to actually share my screen. Can everybody see this window here? Again, if you could give a thumbs up in the chat, that would be great. All right. So we're going to be using Repl to create our website. So what you guys can do is go to repl.com, replit.com, and sign up create an account, and you should see this homepage here. While you guys do that, I'm going to talk a little bit about just about websites in general and about HTML. But you guys can sign up while I do that. So I'm not sure if you guys have used something called DevTools before, or if you've actually looked at the HTML of a page. But if you click Control-Shift-I, you'll get a window that shows you the format and the structure of a web page. Can you guys see the DevTools that I've pulled up? Could I get a thumbs up if you can see a pop-up window here, the DevTools? Okay. Give me 1 second. Okay, there, it's part of my window now. So, so this right here is sort of the content of the page. Here you have the HTML, which is the language that's used to create a website. And you have different elements here. You have a body element and different elements that make up the page. Today, we're actually going to be creating these elements that are going to make up your page, and we're going to create a web page that looks just like this. So have you guys signed up for Repl? Great. Okay, so what we're going to do is you should see something that says create, and we're going to create a REPL. We want it to be in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So we're going to choose that. You can title it whatever you want. I'm just going to title mine website. You can pick a name for yours. And you should see, loading, you should see something that looks like this. Here we have your different files here on the left. You have your code here in the middle. And then off to the right is going to be a window where you can run the code and see your website. Down here is the console, but we're not going to be using that too much, so we can get rid of that. Okay, is everybody at this point? Let me know if you need me to slow down a little bit. Okay, so I'll keep going then. Is everybody here? Okay, great. So here we have those same elements that we saw when we inspected the page. You have HTML, which just says that this is going to be written in HTML. A head tag, and the head tag is is right here. It encapsulates all of the different data about the page. So everything inside the head tag is going to talk about, it's going to sort of describe the page, and we're going to add tags in the head that are going to say what the page is about. The body right here is all of the content of your page. So if you want to put a header, a paragraph, an image on your page, we're going to put it in the body. So yeah, let's get started here. So HTML is made up of a whole bunch of different tags, as you've seen, and each one does something different. So let's start off with a header tag. It's going to be h1, and notice that for each opening tag, you also have a closing tag. This is going to tell the compiler that you're opening a tag and you're closing a tag. What you write in here is what's going to be shown on your web page. So when I run this code, you're going to see that you now have a header. If you didn't have this closing tag here, it wouldn't see the end of this header tag, and so it would become confused, and the code would become a mess. So we need to make sure that for every opening tag we have, we also have a closing tag. Are there any questions so far? If anybody has questions about anything we've covered so far, please let me know. If not, I can keep going. No? Okay, we can keep going then. So now I'm going to show you guys a few different tags that are the most useful and common when building a website. So this is a header. You often have this at the beginning of a page at the top. It's going to describe what your page is about. Let's say you want a subheader, then you might add an H2, which is the first subheader to the main header here. And when you run that, then you should see then that you have a subheader under your main header. And this comes in handy when you have a bunch of different sections. Maybe you're writing an article and you want to have different subheaders, and you can actually have a bunch of these under the same main header. So that's a useful tag. We also have the paragraph tag, which, as you might expect, creates a paragraph. And remember, the content inside the opening and closing tags is what is going to be seen on the page. Is everybody okay with these so far? Keep going. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add an image. This can be an image about anything. You can go onto Google and find an image. So yeah, why don't we do that right now? Everybody go to Google and find any image at all. Does everybody have an image that they want? Yep, great. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy the link to the URL of that image. And we're going to create a tag called image. And actually, instead of having something like this, where you have an open tag, a closing tag, and text in here, like you might expect, we're actually going to create something called an attribute. Inside the image tag here, we're going to define the source of the image. This is going to tell it where to pull the image from. And inside here, we can add that URL of the image that we want to add. And let's see, when we run that, now you can see I have an image of a dinosaur here. You can add whatever you want, but now we have an image. As you can see, it doesn't look great. The image is really big compared to the page. It's not ideal sizing, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah. Does everybody have that? Great. So we're only going to go over a couple more tags. The HR tag and the BR tag are they look like this, and they're both really useful. The BR is a line break, so you can have, let's see, when you run here, you have a space. Everything in HTML is sequential. So here you have your header 1, your header 2, your paragraph, your image. Everything is in order, just like your code is. If you want to space something out, then you can add this tag here, and it'll add a space. And the HR tag actually adds a line break here, which can separate sections and be useful to doing things like that. Let's see, I have a little error icon for the picture. Let's see, did you put it in the source? Oh, okay. And great. Well, oh. Okay. Well, then we can keep moving. The next one is actually a very important tag. This is the div tag. And what this does, it's kind of like a folder where you can keep other elements inside of the div tag. Here you can have a paragraph. You have multiple paragraphs, actually. pretty much any tags you want to add can go into a div tag. This will sort of keep things grouped in your code. And there's advantages to grouping certain sections on a web page. We can go into that a little bit more as well when we begin to style our page. And let's do anchor tags. Anchor tags look like this. And what they do is they actually can link to another website. If on pretty much every website where you click on a link and it takes you to another page, pretty much every time you see that, they're using an anchor tag to send you to another place, another location. And instead of adding our link to where we want to go into here, we want another attribute. But instead of the source attribute, which takes information like this image here and puts it on our website, we're going to add an attribute called H. And that's going to, when clicked on, that's going to send the user to another page. So let's add any URL here. Can add a link to Google here, and you should have a link at the bottom of your page that, when clicked on, would take you to Google. In this editor here, you can't leave your page, but actually, if you click this "Open a New Tab" button, you can see your page in a much bigger screen width here. And then when you click on your link, then it should take you to Google. Does anybody have any questions about any of these tags that we've covered so far? Is everybody good? Great. So we only have, let's see, one or two more to do here, and those will be the basic tags. Let's see. So after the link, we'll create a list. So in HTML, we can create bullet point lists or numbered lists by adding this. UL stands for unordered list. And actually, in this tag, we're going to have LI tags, which stand for list, which means a list element. And we can add multiple elements to our list here. And when we run the page, now you have a nice bullet point list here. And actually, you can create, with the same format, an ordered list. Which has an order, as you might expect, and instead of bullet points, it has 1, 2, and 3. So both of those are useful as well. And so that that concludes that part of the web design workshop. Now we're going to style our page. This doesn't look very aesthetically pleasing. It's not in a great format. And you most likely will want to change things about how this looks. And the way to do that actually isn't in HTML. The way to do that is in CSS. You should have this file here, style.css. And that is where we're going to change the look of our page. So if you click on style.css, you'll see we have a blank. Oh, let's see. Sorry about that. Yeah, a blank page here where we can write our code for the style. So how are we going to tell the style what to style? What we're going to do is we're going to go to any element. I'm just going to choose the first header that we made. And I'm going to give it a class name. Class equals header 1. The class attribute gives it a way, I guess, a way to recognize what that element is, so that in style.css, we can say dot header 1. The dot just means that we're getting a class name, all elements with the class name of header 1. And in here, we can actually style this header. And there's actually a few things we can do. We can change the color of the text. Say we want a green header. Now the text color is green. We can change the background color. And the background has a different color. We can change the font size. To a different point. Good. It's bigger. There's different things you can do to the text to make it look differently. Yeah. So, oops. So in addition to class names, you can also add something called an ID, which works pretty much the same. One of the only differences, the main difference, is that an ID, you can only have one element on your entire page with the ID of my header. In a class name, you can actually have multiple elements with that class. Which then will apply the style of header 1 to both of these elements. But if you have an ID and you style that ID, then that's going to be the only element that's affected by the style. So since both of my headers have a class name of header 1, when I run that, they both should look the same because I'm styling both of them the same. If I were to get rid of that. Let's say I wanted to style for the the ID of my header, I would go to style, and instead of the dot here, which means that we're looking for classes or elements with the class of header one, we're going to use a hashtag symbol, and let's see, what did I name? My header. So my header, and that will allow you to style only the header one, or only the element with the ID of my header. So a couple more useful styling commands we can add, and this is actually a big one. You can add padding, margin, and border. Let's see, let me. Can you guys all see this? These boxes here? Great. So this blue box here is is your actual element. At this time, the element is 176.6 repeating by 92 pixels, and the padding is 0 pixels on each side. There's no border on this element, but we do have a margin here. And this actually is a really good way of sort of visualizing what margin, border, and padding are. This allows you to not have elements like this text right up against the edge of your page. By adding margin, we can push this off a little bit, or by adding padding, we can push this off a little bit. So yeah, let's try adding some margin here. Margin left. And you should see that it now appears to be 10 pixels away from the edge. Whereas if you added 0 pixels, it would be right there, very close to the edge. Let's also add a border. And this can actually be customized as well. We can have a width of, let's say, 2 pixels. We want a solid border. You can have solid borders, dashed borders, just different types of borders. And let's see, what color should we make? Let's just make it red. And you should have a small red border around this box. Now notice that the text is actually right up against this red box, the border here. This is actually where we would use padding. Padding left 10 pixels, and that actually moves the heading away from the edge. How are there fractions of a pixel? So actually, in DevTools, yeah, so it's just saying that this element should be 903.333 pixels. You actually wouldn't set the width to a fraction of a pixel, but that is the exact width. It's going to actually be 903 pixels. don't worry about fractions of a pixel. You're not actually going to set the width to that. I'm noticing that it's multiple. Could you explain a little bit more what you mean by that? Yeah, so often these fractions, I'll pull it up again. These fractions are going to be thirds, and we can actually pixels aren't going to be divided. This is just the computed amount. Why isn't DevTools open? Let's see. So you're not gonna have 0.3 of a pixel. Yeah. So actually, when we actually can do, we can compute simple equations in CSS, and you can actually, let's say, set the padding. Instead of to 10, you can calculate and say 30 divided by, let's say, 4. Or that's not a good example, but 30 plus 5 pixels. And it'll actually make the padding 35 pixels. And this will come into play pretty often. And so calculations like this can sometimes make it compute a fraction of a pixel. So yeah, good question. The next thing we're going to take a look at is actually you can look at things, or you can look at elements in other ways than just pixels. You can say, for example, that the padding left, instead of 10 pixels, you can say 10%. This means that it'll take the entire width of the box of the element and set the padding left to 10% of that. So here you're going to see that this padding is 10% of this entire space here, and this will actually come in really handy, especially when you're developing for different sizes. Many on most websites, you should have a layout that's responsive for mobile and desktop both. And so having this percent, you can also do a couple others, which I'll get into in a second. But having these different almost variables, not a set amount of pixels, will actually come in really handy. And notice when I open the window a little bit wider here, the padding actually grows. And when I shrink it down, then the padding shrinks, because the element, this space here is getting smaller. So 10% of that space is getting larger and smaller. Besides percent and pixels, there's also view width. which instead of only being 10% of the element, it's actually 10% of the entire screen size. And that will come in handy as well when you have elements inside of elements and you want to reference not only how big the current element is, but how big the entire screen is. Are there any questions so far on styling? Are we good? Any questions? Okay, let's keep going. So let's actually make this image a little bit smaller. To do that, we can use the skills we've already learned. So in our image, we can set the ID or the class either would work, but since there's only one image, we can set the ID equal to my image. And then in the styling, we can style the image. So actually to change the size of the image, we can set the width. And the height will automatically correct itself to maintain the same aspect ratio. And now you can see you have a much better sized image. In the same way that we did percent and view width, we can actually do that here as well. We can set it to 100%, which will pretty much fill it to the maximum size it has to do without you having to scroll to see it. And now when you grow or shrink the window, then the image will grow or shrink as well to fit that size. So that's very useful as well for multiple different types of elements, and not just images. But let's say we can also give it a margin. And for kind of notation here, if I just said margin 10 pixels, that would give it a margin on each side of the image. So top, bottom, left, and right will have a margin of 10 pixels. You can specify which side by saying margin top, margin bottom, margin left, or margin right. Or you could say margin 10 pixels, 20 pixels, and here when you run that, then you should have 20 pixels on the left and right and 10 pixels on the top and bottom. Now here is actually where the calc that I showed you comes into play. Let's say you wanted a margin of the image to be 10 pixels. And you want the width of the image to be 100% minus that width that you just minus the margin that you just added. What we can actually do then is say width equals calc 100% minus 20 pixels. And that's taking into account 10 for the left and 10 for the right. And that should allow you to have 10 pixels of margin on each side and an image that fits in that space. Does everybody have that? Are there any questions? Oh, yeah, sorry. And actually in the calc method, you can have 100 view width, you can have 100%, you can have 100 pixels, and it'll calculate it for you. I'll give you guys a couple seconds to get that done if you don't have it already. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the index.html, our code for the actual structure of the page. Actually, if you'll notice here on the tab, you have different elements about the page as well. You have the Repl icon right here. You have the page title, that's website-Repl, and you have a description right under that when you hover over the tab. And actually, as a web developer, we can set those to be whatever we want as well. And so why don't we take a look at that? Actually, if you open your page in a new tab right now, the default is just this little world icon and repl.it, but we can change that, which will sort of give your page an identity. So yeah, for the icon, why don't we get another picture? We can, any picture will do. Usually the icon is a square. You want that to have the same width and the same height to begin with, so that's not squishing a rectangle into that square size. This is actually pretty important. You won't be able to resize it usually, so you won't be able to style it with CSS. So yeah, why don't we find a square image to use for our icon. Okay, and since this the icon of our page is actually not part of the content of the page, it's part of the identity of the page, we're actually going to put this tag in the head instead of the body. So we're going to create a tag called link. And we're going to give it an attribute called rel and put our image, it's a long URL, put our image in there. Actually, I don't know that my image will work there. Yeah, it needs to be from an actual website, but yeah, when you have your square image that you'd like to use as an icon, you can put that in there, and you should see your icon right here on the tab. If you give a thumbs up in the chat when you have, would be helpful. Just wait for a couple more people to give a thumbs up. We have one. If you don't have an image at this time that you'd like to put on your page, you can always come back to that in a little bit. Just make sure that you put the URL right here, link rel equals the URL. And actually, for this for this link tag, you actually don't need a closing tag for that. That's one of the exceptions to the rule. You're not actually putting any text in it, so you don't need that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to take a look at is the title tag, and they actually gave us a title tag right here. That's repl.it, and that's actually why when you pull up your page here, the name of it is repl.it. We can actually change that to whatever our page is going to be about. So I can change that to SOAR website. And I should, see the title change to dinosaur website here. The third and final one in this category here is the description. The description is actually for Repl. Doesn't have a great description, but I'll show you where it is in a second. For this, we're going to say meta. Meta tags. It's going to describe your page, sort of administrative. So the attribute name equals description is going to tell it that this tag is going to be the description for the website. And we can give it content. that's going to be your description. The main place that you can actually see your description is actually on Google. If you've ever, I'm sure you've all done a Google search, and you see a blue. Here, why don't I show you? Right here, you have the blue link, and that's actually usually your title that you put here, dinosaur website. And this right here, this gray text, they'll take that from your description that you write about your page. And so when you're on Google, when Google indexes your site and shows it on in a Google search, then the user will read your description as that gray text. So that's kind of cool. People will actually read that when they're clicking on your page in Google. Yeah, so we're actually reaching the end of our time here. But before we go, I'd like to open it up to any questions. Go over. Sure. So the square icon, if you have a square or an image that has the same width as height, say 300 pixels by 300 pixels, you would have link rel equals and then the URL for that image, and you would put the URL there, and the image or the icon will show up there on your website and on the tab. Yeah, so yeah, so actually, why don't I do it as well? I'm gonna upload a file here from my computer, and you can actually access any of these files that are right here in your code. So you can say let's see the chat here. Yeah, so Anthony, just like you said, link. And then you would put the name of your image right there. And if there, you can see that I now have the icon on my tab. It's a little dinosaur. And so yeah, Anthony, that is correct. Great. Are there any other questions? No. Okay. Well, looks like we're out of time. If you have any questions about creating a website, please feel free to contact me either through email or through our Discord. We also have mentors who are ready and willing to help. Also, my friend Ethan Wang will be hosting a GitHub Q&A in about, 15 or 30 minutes here. And he'll post something in the Discord for that, but you can actually load this onto GitHub. So if you have any questions, you can ask him as well. Let's see, I'm getting a message here. Oh, actually, it looks like he's pushing the GitHub workshop back a little bit, but you'll receive a message in the Discord about when that is. Please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us if you do have any questions, and we'll try and as much as possible. Okay. Well, if nobody has any more questions, then yeah, I'm glad you guys came, and I hope you learned something. And yeah, feel free to reach out if you have any other questions. Have a good day. Happy hacking.